Greetings, everybody. This is David Chatham with Angel Oak Creative. Welcome to our latest installment of our Talking Tough series. We're doing this as it relates to our theme this year of nonprofit tough and what it takes to be a nonprofit tough organization and what it takes to be a nonprofit tough community. Today, we're talking to Amy Strecker, who is the Stakeholder Engagement Manager at Duke Energy Foundation. Duke Energy Foundation is hugely generous to our area. We're going to talk about that, but we just really thought that Amy and her team do such amazing work around helping to build our community into a nonprofit tough community. We thought this would be a great conversation. So thank you, Amy, for being here. And just tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Duke Energy Foundation, just to let the folks get to know you a little bit.
Thank you, David, for having me, and thanks for everyone for tuning in today. I am Amy Strecker. I work at the Duke Energy Foundation. I made my way to North Carolina after graduate school, after undergrad, and started as a high school English teacher in Eastern North Carolina, worked in the nonprofit community for a few years, then went to graduate school and landed at Progress Energy, which later became Duke Energy. I've been in the role at the Duke Energy Foundation for the last 5 years and have the real privilege of working with our nonprofit communities across North Carolina, looking at different opportunities for Duke Energy to make strategic investments that improve the lives of our customers. So the Duke Energy Foundation and Duke Energy Corporation together give about $20 million in North Carolina each year. That's through a combination of both volunteer programs, employee matching programs, and then competitive grant programs, which I get to administer around the state.
That's great.
Focuses in 3 areas: K-12 education, workforce, and environment. And then we have some flexibility to do responsive grant making like we've needed to in this last year.
That's great. Yeah, and responsiveness is certainly one of the traits that we've identified as being part of a nonprofit tough community. So, I think that's amazing. And let me refresh everybody's memory there. When we talk about a tough nonprofit community, what we're talking about is a community that's collaborative, a community that's generous, a community that's engaged, a community that's responsive, and a community that believes in empowerment, right? So those are the kind of the 5 traits that we've identified. And, when I asked Amy to talk to us today, I was thinking, we've kind of looked at this series and we've identified one trait and, focused on talking maybe to an organization or a person that exemplifies that trait. But when I looked at the Duke Energy Foundation, I said, wow, you guys embody all of these traits because all of the things that you do just complement those so well. So it's going to be a little different conversation in the sense it's going to be a little more broad ranging and across that, but we're going to hone in on a couple of those things. Duke Energy, and I keep wanting to say Progress there, and before that it was CP&L for those old school folks who have been around a while. And I'll share my quick connection to CP&L, Progress Energy, and Duke Energy. I shared this with Amy a while back, but back when I was in my teens to early 20s, I actually did kind of a summer program there where, and this is old now, remember I'm in my 50s, I actually took the bills from your vendors and took pictures onto microfiche of them for the accounting department. So I spent 8 hours a day taking paper, putting it over a little camera, taking a picture and filing it. So it was quite an experience there. And I actually kind of enjoyed it. It was just a very just a really repetitive task that allowed my mind to go in other places. So it was kind of an interesting experience, and I enjoyed that. So
I'm glad to report, David, that we are no longer paying vendors by microphone. We've evolved some, but
you stepped it up a notch.
Yeah, I had told David when we first spoke that I actually came to Progress Energy through a summer program too. And I think that's one of the ways that the company invests in the communities by creating opportunities for young people to learn about our work. And, David, you had hit on the 5 qualities you'd identified. And when I was prepping for today and thinking about the work that you've already done through your conversations, I think all of those qualities apply to funders too, particularly in this last year of the pandemic, that if you are going to be a good partner to the nonprofit community, then your giving practices and your strategy need to reflect these same principles. And so It makes sense when you talk about nonprofit strong communities, because it's not just the nonprofit, it's that the funding partner has to have that same perspective for things to really work.
I think so. I mean, we're better together, all of those things. And I just, as we were talking about this theme this year, we said, you can't have nonprofit tough organizations without a community that is responsive and engaged and collaborative and generous and all of those things. So I agree. And again, I think Duke Energy does a great job of that. One of the things you talk about, is building powerful communities. So that idea of toughness, that idea of being strong and powerful, obviously it ties into the idea of your power facilitation. How does that drive the choices you make about investing in the people, the neighborhoods, the region that you guys serve? What does that look like on a feet on the street, practical kind of approach?
Yes, I also love the term powerful communities. And Duke Energy in North Carolina is in a unique position. So we are both a large company, one of the largest in the state, but we are also so hyper local. We are literally in your yard, in your community. We have employees in every community in the state. We serve 96 of the state's county, either through our electric or gas operations. So Duke Energy is really a neighborhood company too. We are the people that live down the street from you, in addition to being a really large electric delivery corporation. So we're thinking about two things when it comes to our giving. There are times and opportunities when Duke Energy needs to step up in a leadership role for something that really matters to North Carolina. And you'll see us make some larger grants in that spirit too. But then a lot of our grant making is really hyper local. Well, we have empowered the employees living in those local communities to build relationships with nonprofits and push out meaningful dollars into those communities. And what is really cool, particularly about some of the smaller communities, is that $2,000 can have a lot of meaning and impact at a small nonprofit organization and really make a difference in that community. And that some of our smaller gifts are really meaningful and can make a difference across North Carolina. So from the gifts that Duke Energy Foundation does, we made 463 grants in 2020. From those grants, our average size gift was about $20,000 and our median size gift was about $5,000. So a lot of our grant making happens at that smaller dollar level where it's a local person giving to a local organization. And then we've also, particularly this year, really stepped up our ability to be responsive and to listen to what the needs of our nonprofit communities are. And that played out in a couple of ways this last year. I'll give you a few examples. One, right when the pandemic was happening in March of 2020, we were set to release our K-12 education grants, a process we had worked on. People had spent time on these applications. We spent time reviewing them. And then we just had to pause and say, hold on, is this still relevant? And what we decided to do is to go ahead and make grants based on the programs that folks had submitted to us for. But we said, if you need to convert this grant gift into general operating funds for your organization to survive in these next months, you have our permission to do that. You don't even need to ask.
That's great.
Yeah, and so that flexibility just really helped nonprofits in a moment of, oh my goodness, what is going on right now as the pandemic was breaking? And then we were able to continue that and be responsive. When the social unrest broke out in the early summer of last year, we said, this is something that matters to Duke Energy and it matters to North Carolina. So we stood up a 3-year grant program for social justice and racial equity. We did $1 million last year. That's was $25,000 grants for general operating support to organizations primarily led by people of color across the state. And then we've also deployed dollars for hyper-local things, particularly when it comes to feeding, saying, we're going to make this commitment to getting food to hungry North Carolinians, to students that aren't getting that school lunch. And that is often best done at the local community level too. So trying to take on leadership roles when we really need to, but being really tuned into what's happening in our local communities.
Yeah. And you guys are so, from the folks that you have on the front lines, repairing wires during storms and all of those things, to being there financially and all of that's just that to me just again embodies that whole spirit of focused on the community. And sure, you guys are a for-profit, right? You're directed at making money for your stakeholders. However, that doesn't preclude you from really investing in the community and being part of that. And I think it even makes it, even much more of a mandate, right? That you do that. I mean, there's almost that kind of position. But the level of generosity that you guys bring to it is just really impressive. So thank you for that from all of us for doing that. You talked a little bit about this already, but just if you can expand on a little bit, the idea of this empowerment of that. And certainly some of the things you did this year were more about really survival, right, for some of these nonprofits, and maybe some short-term fixes for that. But I noticed that much of your philosophy is about empowering these local communities and equipping them to succeed for the longer term. Why is that empowering part of really looking at the longer term success? How does that play into your decisions, and why is that important when you guys are looking at opportunities to invest in communities?
There is not enough money at the Duke Foundation for us to sustain every nonprofit in North Carolina. And it's not an appropriate role for us either. But I think the role for both the Duke Energy Foundation and a great role for philanthropy in general is to provide some spending for nonprofits to test and pilot a solution and find ways to make that solution sustainable. So I think when you talk about empowering nonprofits, it's often the people that are running the nonprofits in the local community. They don't need a big business coming in telling them how to do their community work. They're the experts in that work and saying, we have this idea that we think could really help North Carolinians. And it's our role to be listening for that opportunity and then say, we have some money to help you make this happen. Let's see if it really is a solution for North Carolinians. And then the organization, finds models to sustain that over time. And sometimes that's with additional funding from Duke Energy if the model is working. So I think that's part of it. And then, you also talked about partnership, and it really is partnership. It matters to Duke Energy that we show up in our communities, and showing up is more than just a check. It's more than just financial.
Yeah.
Showing up means listening, it means learning, it means adapting your strategy, both in the way that we do business and the way that we give money based on what the feedback from the community is. So showing up is all of those things, and partnership is more than just that financial transaction.
Yeah, I think what I admire about companies like Duke Energy Foundation, or like Duke Energy and the foundation that is part of that, is that idea that you don't have all the answers, right? But you have resources that hopefully can help people get to those answers. And, that, to your point, is an important role that you can play. You guys are experts at providing power and the power grid and all of those things, but you may not be experts at finding solutions for homelessness or for addiction recovery or any of those things. So the fact that you recognize that and then identify people who are and invest in them, I think, is an important role that has to be played in our community to develop these nonprofit tough communities. That the organizations, again, not one person or one organization can do it by themselves, right? I mean, the challenges in our communities are so big. Certainly the resources we have aren't limitless, but they're abundant. I mean, that's the thing, especially in the Carolinas and most of our communities, they're abundant. When you get a little more rural, they certainly become less available. But you guys don't necessarily just speak into the metropolitan areas, right? You go into some of the more rural areas. Talk about maybe the difference there, how you decide and how you determine what those communities, how you can best serve those communities.
Yes, we are always looking at all of North Carolina. We care about all communities in North Carolina. So when it comes to both our budgets and our grant making process, we're looking at where organizations are centered, the populations that they're serving, to make sure we're reaching out into our communities. And, a cool example of learning with a nonprofit from this last year and then putting it to play that I'll share is the Downtown Raleigh Alliance, an organization that's working with, small street front businesses in downtown Raleigh. They had a cool opportunity that we jumped onto to provide storefront revitalization grants for businesses.
I saw that
Had some COVID struggles or that in the social unrest were damaged. it was just a stellar opportunity, stellar program where a few $1,000s could really make a difference for some of these businesses working to pivot. We were so pleased by that program. We said, how can we take this to more communities across North Carolina? So just last week, we announced a statewide hometown revitalization
Oh,
grant
wow.
where we are going to invest $500,000. And what that will look like is $25,000 grants to 20 nonprofits in different communities in North Carolina. And then what those nonprofits will do is administer a small business support program in their local community to do some hometown revitalization. So those will be projects, both COVID pivots, both some beautification work that businesses need. So we're excited to have those applications come in. There's going to be, I think, many of them because there's so many wonderful hometowns in North Carolina, and we're going to identify 20 from across the state and send some funding out to them. So love that example of tried
Yeah.
on with a nonprofit, really liked how successful that program was. And we said, how can we do this for more places outside of just our urban center?
No, that's great. Not to put you on the spot, but when can people find out about that program? And is information available now or
It is. Thank
or
you,
not?
David. So at duke-energy.com/hometown. We'll take everyone to all of the information and you can apply right there. Applications are open through the end of May. So we're looking for that 501c3 nonprofit that would work as the administrating nonprofit to facilitate those small business grants. So all the information available there.
Right. And can you say that one more time? I may have stepped on on your URL. So if you could say the URL one more time.
It's www.duke-energy.com/hometown.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that. No, that's great. I saw that. Our office is in downtown Raleigh, so we're involved a little bit with the Downtown Raleigh Alliance and all of that. And I saw that program come out and it just, I was like, this is great because we certainly need that kind of encouragement, right, for people to continue to support local and to invest locally and to do that. So thank you guys for taking on that role. You guys are generous, more than 20 million a year within North Carolina. What have you learned about the value of investing in communities for companies, right? So if another company, maybe they're not a Duke Energy, but maybe they're a larger company, 100 employees or a couple of hundred employees, what is the value there for them being part of a nonprofit tough community, right? What do they get back? I mean, not necessarily financially, but what's the return on their investment for really investing in their community? What have you seen, for Duke, and then maybe some of the partners and other people that you've worked with?
Well, David, you started our conversation talking about CP&L that became Progress and now Duke Energy. So our roots are so deep in North Carolina. We're approaching, I think, our 120th anniversary of being a company.
Wow.
In the state, and there just aren't too many organizations that have been around that long. And I think companies that have been successful that long, it's because they have focused in deep rooted partnerships and in knowing their communities. And I wouldn't call it necessarily a benefit that comes back to the company, but I would say what we are working to cultivate is trust, so that when a community comes to us with an idea, they have a receptive listening partner, whether that's on our business side or the foundation side. And the same for us. When we go to a community and say, here's a project that we need to make happen to make sure that our electric delivery is reliable in North Carolina, that our community is resilient to storms, that there's a place for an open dialogue. And I think that happens on relationships that are nurtured and cultivated over time, both through doing business the right way and treating people well. And then also sometimes that's investing in communities where there's a need and an opportunity. And we say, this really makes sense for Duke Energy to be part of this too. And sometimes it's those foundation dollars coming into the community. So I think successful business practice is rooted in relationships where there is a path to success, both for the company and the community. And it's finding those opportunities to work together and to have wins together. That's when it's most fun to be in business.
That's great. Yeah. And, I'm just thinking about all the businesses and nonprofits that you guys support with services and with funds and all of those things. What is from a smaller business, and again, I know you guys aren't a small business, but from a smaller business, what's an easy way that they can maybe identify their first step in getting involved in the community? What is there, is there a way that they can partner with like a Duke Energy as being a partner with them, or just identifying opportunities to create that collaborative experience within the community?
Yeah, great suggestion. It's going to vary community by community, but I
Right.
think most communities have some sort of network. Maybe that's happening through a chamber, maybe it's happening through a downtown revitalization organization, maybe it's a preservation organization, but find what that group is and network in with them. And if your community doesn't have that group, think about, are you the one to create it? Are
Right.
there 4 or 5 other small business owners who you could start meeting every few weeks over coffee at your local coffee shop and talk about, what can we do together? I believe that small businesses are more powerful when you work together, and what you can accomplish for your community is more powerful when you work together. I've seen this, evidence in some small towns in North Carolina that, each small business going at it alone is really a challenge. But when they work together and say, this Saturday is going to be our spring market day, and there's
Mm.
promotion that happens together, people come from out of town, and it's really an event, everyone does better by that collaborative work together. So I think the small business community collaborating, and, I am not telling small businesses anything they don't already know, right? These people
Yeah.
are entrepreneurs. They are successful because they know the needs of their community and they found solutions and they're responding to it. These folks are nimble and agile. And I think anyone who's succeeding in small business is doing it because they know the value of the community and they want to serve that community well.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more that it's about relationships, right? And it's that trust that you build over time, and proving that you're reliable, and proving that you are part of the community, and that you're willing to invest in that community because of the benefit you get out of it, right? The relationships that you're building. So yeah, relationships have always, I mean, I've been in public relations for 25 years now, and it really, I've always said it's not, it really is about the relationship you're building. It's not about just sending out a press release, or it's not about just telling people something. It's creating a two-way dialogue. It's creating a relationship, and the most successful companies do that well. And I think that's a great example. So looking at it on the other side of it, from the nonprofit perspective, if they want to work with a Duke Energy Foundation or some other foundation, what advice can you give them about how to engage with you, how to start building that relationship with you and other foundations and other organizations that are charitably minded? What does that look like? How can they figure out what that entry point is, or how to deepen that relationship?
A great place to start is on our website or the website for any organization. So that website is duke-energy.com/foundation. So all of our resources are there. There's a way to reach out by email. We can make sure any nonprofit that's interested gets routed to the right person. And I think some of the best advice I can give is to do your homework before you reach out to an organization. Duke
Mhm.
Energy, like our corporate friends across the state, has gotten specific about what we can give to, because we can't be everyone's solution. So we're trying to provide some meaningful investment in a few areas. So read up on those areas, see if they're applicable to you. And I would say don't force fit.
Mm.
Don't forcing fit means being responsive if we're saying, oh, thank you for asking, but this is just not a fit for what we're investing in right now, which might be the case. And then I'd also say don't force fit on the scale of the ask. So,
Mm.
our generous $20 million in North Carolina, by the time that's divided around all of the communities we serve, those dollars get small pretty quickly. And so to have some realistic expectation going into that
Mm.
conversation, I think it makes a lot of sense for nonprofits. So I think starting by doing your homework, which nonprofits are good about doing, particularly if they have a development team, those folks know where to track down that information. But that information is available, and many organizations, Duke Energy too, will tell you how they'd like to be contacted on the website, and that can be a great point of entry.
So coming to you with a $20 million request probably would not be ideal to start the relationship.
Yeah, probably not. I chuckle a little bit because there's been a couple of times where, without any conversation or context, I do get a multi-million-dollar request that comes into our grant system that I know nothing about. And at every foundation, public, private, there's someone who's in that kind of manager or program officer role. And that person can really be an advocate for you in the grant process. But if they don't know you, if they do not know your organization, they cannot effectively advocate for you. So don't send
Yeah.
things out of left field. Ask to have that conversation ahead of time. I found people generous about having that conversation. Ask for 15 or 30 minutes if there's an opportunity. I think people will give you that feedback, and create an opportunity for the foundation staff to be an advocate for you in that process. And you can't advocate for what you don't know about.
Yeah, and I think, I appreciate that, because I certainly think people feel a little intimidated, right? That they come to a big corporation, especially if you're a smaller organization. You're like, do they really care about me? Or, they don't even know who I am. And to your point, just making a simple request of a 15-minute phone call, can make all the difference. I've, even reaching out to folks like you to do these interviews, right? I mean, we're a little Angel Oak 7-person company, and it's not like we're a huge entity, but reaching out to Duke Energy Foundation and saying, hey, is this something you might be willing to consider? And your generous, donation of your time to do this was certainly unexpected and really grateful. But we wouldn't have known if we hadn't have asked, right? So, so that's great.
Let me add one
Oh,
more
go ahead.
thing. I think
Yeah,
another
please.
great place to connect with folks in the foundation world and just in the funder world in general is LinkedIn. So
Oh,
LinkedIn is really a tool. It's where I'm posting grant opportunities I know about from my company and from others. And it's also a place where I see some of the work that my nonprofit friends and partners are doing as they're sharing information. So I think it's a good casual way to keep your pulse on what's going on in the philanthropic world of North Carolina and beyond North Carolina, and can really be a tool. And so I think many people treat LinkedIn the way I do. If someone asks to connect with me, send a little note just giving some context. Hi, I lead a nonprofit in North Carolina. Would love to follow you. That's really helpful from weeding out the spam from the legitimate request. But I'm glad to let folks follow, and I find that I learned from them too. So I think LinkedIn's a real tool.
you're speaking my love language. I'm a LinkedIn fan, so I linked in with you shortly after we were introduced, and I think that's I agree. I think it's a great tool, and when used wisely and appropriately, it can make some really great connections. And I found that to be true. I think I joined when it first opened 20 something years ago or whatever, but it was, it is a great tool and a great resource to find the right people who are in those decision-making processes. So, well, Amy, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about that you want to make sure people know before we wrap up here about Duke Energy Foundation, or working with you, or nonprofit tough communities, and kind of how you support that?
I would just say I want folks to know that I and Duke Energy, we are deeply appreciative of the work the nonprofit community does all the time, but particularly what they have done this last year. They have pivoted, they have exercised agility, they have made really hard decisions, all in the name of serving their clients and serving North Carolina well. And I'm just profoundly grateful for that. And I am really humbled by the opportunity I have to work with North Carolina's nonprofit tough communities, and know and feel that it is a real privilege and honor to be able to facilitate some of these conversations. So thank you for the exciting opportunities that nonprofits share, both the ones we can fund and the ones we can't. I really appreciate the work that's happening to make North Carolina a great place for nonprofits.
Yeah, and coming off of last year, just in moving into this year, just seeing everybody come together was really exciting. I mean, whether it was the unrest within the communities or whether it was around COVID, certainly just watching people, try to work through all that and wrestle through it, but also to come together and help nonprofits to not just survive through that time, but to also, some of them had to grow their operations, whether it's food banks or all of those things. And I know you support a lot of those causes, and just watching people come around and support that and demonstrate what it means to be a nonprofit tough community is what really inspired us to have these conversations this year. So thank you for being a part of that. One more time, if people want to find out more about the foundation, where can they go?
That's duke-energy.com/foundation.
All right. And you're on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to connect with you, I'm sure you would be glad to consider that. And Angel Oak Creative, also angeloakcreative.com. And we're certainly on LinkedIn and Facebook and all those places as well. So Amy, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all the work you guys do. And thank you for helping us to be a nonprofit tough community. And look forward to staying in touch and following the work you guys are doing.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for your time.